What is that one thing that most of the designers are still getting it wrong, but it needs to be corrected?
Designers focus a lot on visuals. So just putting in pretty designs, pretty outcomes doesn't really make you stand out.
Tinder-Mode hiring, what was that? Because that actually got stuck with me. I am still not clear what did you mean by that.
In Tinder, if you notice, how does the app work? It's all about showing you profiles. There is an option to swipe right if you like a profile and if you like to probably converse with the person, or swipe left. So this is exactly what happens.
Most of them are fantastically good with their work, but what is their one mistake that they do because of which it costs their job?
They chase pretty visuals, which shouldn't be the only thing that they are focusing on. So that is one thing. Many a times people, they're not concise with what they're presenting in their portfolio.
What are those things that are changing, or there are different demands that the industry is changing in, but the designers are not that aware of?
It's important for aspiring designers to understand that just coming up with design solutions which are not, in tandem with the business needs.
Welcome to Journeys Unmapped, a place where we go deeper into each and every conversation with our guests and try to uncover the success stories of their career. Today's conversation is something very important to every single designer on earth, yet they don't admit it. They don't talk about it much. And what is that? How to get hired. How to stand their portfolios out in the crowd. How to make the recruiters swipe right on their portfolios. And for this conversation, I have a very dear friend with me, a UX leader at To The New, the founder of a community, Design Wine, and a great mentor. He has been mentoring me as well for a lot of things. Welcome to the show, Rajat Agarwal.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So Rajat, let me put you on the spot right away and help me understand, where is Rajat coming from? What is your background? Starting right from where Rajat actually entered the design world.
Sure, Sachin. So, it's a long story actually, but I'll probably give you the highlights. So I'm BTech by degree, but it is something that I did not want to do actually. Is the
Like
case with
most of the engineers.
absolutely right. So I was sort of pushed into this world because of job security and whatnot. I initially wanted to be a musician. I play keyboards, so I wanted to join A.R. Rahman's troupe, but that was something far-fetched coming from a middle-class family. So I entered BTech, and there I learned the art of web designing because there was no UX back in the day. All there was that was related to the field was web designing. So I learned that, and I used to participate in college fests and college contests, right? And I won a lot of awards of web designing contests, and that is
Really?
how my love for designing, if we can even remotely call that, came to be, right? And then I got recruited by Accenture, but I was hired as a Java developer, and I had absolutely no interest in that. So I then sort of found my way into, again, looking for my way to do something close to designing. I became a UI interface designer inside of Accenture. So I used to work on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery was upcoming in those times, so that kind of stuff. And then what happened was I was sent on site to London for about a year. And there I worked really closely with actual UX designers from the client's team. And it was there that I, got fascinated by their whole lifestyle, the kind of work they do. They're looking for design solutions to complex business problems. And that was when I decided that this is what my calling is. And after I came back, I spoke to my managers and seniors, and I sort of switched my domain to UX design. So
That's lovely. That's
yeah.
lovely. I'll take a more minute in terms of understanding this journey. So when you said that when you were trying to explore while you were in a Java developer job, what were the kind of questions that came to your mind, or the thoughts that you were dealing with while you were exploring, and you bridged the gap by saying that this is my calling?
Yeah, so you know what? When I entered the industry, I was sort of trying to understand how the industry works, because if you're outside of the industry, you have a totally different perspective and notion of how things actually work, right?
True that.
So I used to believe that maybe if you're not a skilled programmer, you wouldn't have anything to do inside of an organization, and you might be called out by your seniors and all, and it's just programming or the stuff that you're taught in your college life, in your undergrad degrees, is what will sort of uh, come to your rescue. But that's not the case. Once I entered, I also realized that there are a lot of other streams that were not taught to me in college, right? And so while we were working on a project, I realized, okay, there's something known as user interface designing, and that's also a job that somebody is doing, right? And they are doing it really great. And I had no idea about it because I wasn't taught about it, right? And then I realized that there are ways of switching your domains once you are inside the industry, and you can undergo some trainings, take some certifications to do that. But that can be done, and it can be done effectively. So that is the thing, when I say, this is what I mean when I say that you find your way once you are inside of the organization.
I think that's where the interest and the zeal also matters a lot. When you actually enter an organization with a different role, and then you try to realize that there could be something else also to explore and learn, and then maybe find your own passion.
Absolutely. So if you're, I'll tell you what, I was always passionate about working in the tech industry. So that's one, that thing, this is the thing that helped me. Because if you're passionate about working in the industry, you'll be very keenly observing what's going
True.
on, how things work, how are clients being dealt with, right? And what are their needs, requirements, and so on. And if you do that, if you are passionate about working somewhere, you will easily find your way on what is it inside of that organization that you want to do. So that's the thing. Many a times what happens is people are not really passionate, so they resort to just treating it as a 9 to 5 job. And if you're not passionate about anything, you wouldn't really be observing anything. It just wouldn't come to you naturally.
Lovely. In fact, that brings me to a very different question before we begin the entire conversation. This word passion is quite used by most of the, I would say, professionals, design professionals to be precise, that you need to find your passion. Passion in what sense? How do I even discover that this is something what I can even call a passion?
I'll tell you what. So, passion is a term that is quite loosely used, right?
True, true.
And it's also been, it's also become mainstream because of usage in movies like Three Idiots and all. But passion, how I define passion is something that you are interested in doing without worrying about the outcomes. So something that you're interested in doing without worrying if this is going to make me money, or if it's going to put me on a pedestal, if it's going to sort of explode my career. If you can find that calling, this is something that I like to do. It could be singing, or it could be maybe just reading. That's your passion as well. It won't make you any money, but if you can find that calling, that's what passion is. And if you're passionate about something, sooner or later you will find ways to sort of maneuver your
Absolutely.
way.
I completely agree with you. Completely. Because most of the time, people treat passion as a transactional entity. They want to explore a passion so that they can earn money or they can earn better money. Whereas they don't realize that passion is not something which will give them money in the initial stage. It is something that comes very naturally to you. You start doing it, and while you are doing it, you also make money.
Right, absolutely.
Lovely. Let's start with the very interesting piece of our conversation that we talked outside is the dark truth of UX design hiring. Any thoughts before I ask you a question?
I'll tell you this. Many times, what happens is people who are applying for various design jobs in the industry, and especially freshers who are not really aware of how the industry works, they think that they'll come up with a portfolio and they'll put in all sorts of stuff that makes them interesting. And one of the key misconceptions that they have is that a recruiter will have a lot of time at their hands to really go through their portfolio. That doesn't really happen all the time. So what they have to be mindful of is that recruiters are busy people, right? They are swamped with work. So contrary to the popular belief that a recruiter would be just going through various portfolios of candidates, that come their way, it doesn't happen. They have other responsibilities as well, right? Nobody's looking at portfolios as their only task. throughout the day. So, for example, if I am hiring a candidate for my team, what I'll be doing is I'll be glancing at portfolios, and I'll have other stuff to do as well. I'll have like multiple projects that I have to oversee. I have sales and proposal calls that I have to attend to, right? And then portfolio viewing and hunting for a candidate just makes up for a tiny bit of my whole day.
Let me pause you here and ask you this hard hitting question. You have reviewed endless portfolios, you have interviewed endless people. What is that one thing that most of the designers are still getting it wrong, but it needs to be corrected?
I think designers focus a lot on visuals. So just putting in pretty designs, pretty outcomes doesn't really make you stand out. There was probably a time where it used to do it, right? Where it used to, just people were just after pretty visuals, but that's not the case anymore. So if your portfolio resembles anything close to a dribble profile, you are not really standing yourself out. In fact, you are just an ordinary designer then. Yeah. So that's the key mistake that people make.
I happen to remember one of your conversations about Tinder-Mode hiring. What was that? Because that actually got stuck with me. I am still not clear what did you mean by that. So can you elaborate on
Right,
that?
right. So I'll tell you what. We all have been on Tinder in our young days, and
Of
the
course.
freshers, they're all on Tinder, I'm sure, or similar apps. So in Tinder, if you notice, how does the app work? It's all about showing you profiles in one go, and there is an option to swipe right if you like a profile, and if you like to probably converse with the person, or swipe left, right? So this is exactly what happens by a recruiter when you swamp them with portfolios. So this is what I call that as the Tinder mode of hiring.
So can you go a little deeper
Right,
into so
right.
that my Tinder doesn't go bad?
Absolutely. So now in this Tinder mode of hiring, what happens is, suppose I'm looking for a candidate and I'm swamped with 100 portfolios. Do I really have the time to go through each and every portfolio and spend a good 5-10 minutes on each portfolio? Not really. So what I'll do is I'll quickly scan through a portfolio, look at the important stuff if this candidate is a good fit for us, and then I'll swipe right or shortlist, right, and maybe move ahead with the candidate, or I'll just reject and be done with that candidate. So this is how it works in the actual practical sense of the word.
Okay, let me break this down. When you said you shortlist, what are those couple of things that a design leader like you would see in a portfolio? Give me in bullet points like this.
So first of all, the opening line is quite important. So if I read the name and right after it, I have a short, crisp sentence on what defines you as a designer. That is very important, right? So it'll sort of uh, spur my interest into reading the whole portfolio of yours, right? The second thing is your selection of case studies that has to be on point. So what people do is they put in just about everything that they've worked on, which is not the right case. So you have to tailor down your portfolio to the kind of job that you're applying for or the organization that you're applying. So let's take an example of Paytm. If there is an opening for a designer, and if you were to apply at Paytm, what will happen is if you were to put just every sort of case study that you worked on, it wouldn't make you stand out. If you can find something close to the fintech industry, if not directly, something related to Paytm, from the fintech world, or you can showcase your knowledge of a similar app in one way or the other, that will help you stand out. So you have to tailor down your portfolio to the kind of job or the organization that you are applying for. So that is very important. And when we talk of case study, I have this framework which I read about somewhere. It's called the PAR framework, for PAR.
Can you elaborate that?
Yeah. P stands for problem, A for action, and R for results. So if you can sort of shorten your case studies to reflect these three key outcomes, that'll help make your case study shine and would be the perfect case study to put in your portfolio. So what a problem means is how you defined the project that you worked on. What were the things, the key objectives that you were trying to achieve in terms of, let's say, there was a business objective that you were going after. For example, form abandonment rate had to be reduced, or user engagement had to be increased. So that becomes part of a problem, right? And then action is what you did to solve that problem. Maybe you did a whole lot of user research, you interviewed the end users to understand how they are using the application. That becomes part of the action. Or maybe you interviewed just about business stakeholders or the clients, or went through some Google Analytics reports. That becomes your action, right? And then finally, the result. And now again, the result doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't hurt to include pretty visuals, but it has to be more than that. So the outcome could be in terms of, all right, this was the app. The app had, for example, a 3.7 rating on the App Store before I worked on it as a designer. And after that, we measured the app ratings in a period of, let's say, 3 or 6 months. And after that, the rating rose from 3.7 to 4.1. So that becomes a definitive result that, as a recruiter, I'd be interested in. So the PAR, or the PAR framework, is very important if you're working on your case studies. And if I were to elaborate, it also come. You must have heard that storytelling is very important if you
True,
are a
true,
UX
true.
designer, right?
For everything, you need
And
storytelling.
if you are, let me just elaborate on the PAR framework a bit, right? So we've all heard that storytelling is an important aspect for a UX designer, right? We've all heard that, and we should implement that. Now, even when you are doing you're following the PAR framework in your case studies, it's actually a part of storytelling. So, there's this book by Joseph Campbell called A Hero's Journey. What it tells is a hero's journey. If you look at any sort of a story, any sort of a movie, or story in any format, be it a novel or a book, there's this hero, a protagonist, and the journey begins for the hero by the introduction. And then the hero probably gets into a problem or some sort of a conflict. And then the whole story is about how the hero goes on to solve that problem or conflict. And
Damn.
in the end, there is finally a resolution, right? So if we are talking about storytelling in UX design, you have to follow this hero's journey. And here you are the protagonist, you are the hero, and you are telling a story to the world. So you have to begin with the problem that affected you, and how you solved it, the action, and what were the outcomes. So, the PAR framework, it kind of resonates well with a hero's journey, and that's how it
Lovely,
works.
lovely. You kind of broke down the entire cinema altogether by just giving this one example. And even I was in awe that, yes, most of the stories are like that. There is a problem statement, there is an action that they take for the solution, and finally, there is a solution. Now, help me understand with a very live project or something which you worked on in recently, maybe couple of months, years, which you can quote only if that it doesn't come under the NDA,
Sure.
to help us understand how we look at a problem, how we go for the solutions, and finally how we actually get the result.
Right. So I'll what I'll do is I'll take a generic project, right? Let's not go into a real project, but for example, if the client reaches out to you and they want a redesign of their app, and let's say it's a media app, right? So we have to understand what is it that the client is looking for. And sometimes it's that the client is also not aware of what they're looking for. They just want a revamp. But there has to be a reason why they want a revamp. And it's the job of a UX designer to sort of ask the client if they are not really sure, and to be able to direct them in a way that they are able to give away that reason, right? And this is what is known as business KPI. So what are the KPIs that we are chasing here? And like I said, it could be anything that is measurable, or it could be like, the general perception of the app is that it's not very usable. So once we have that objective right from the business stakeholders, that becomes our key objective that we have to chase for the rest of the process. The second step is trying to understand the primary users who would be using the interface that you are designing. And once you have these two things in place is where you'll be able to balance these two, the business objectives and the user needs. And many times what where people falter is they only focus on the user's needs, but that's a strict no, or that's something that will take you nowhere, because if you're only focusing on the user needs, there's not going to be any business eventually, right? And that's not something that we are striving at.
I think, in fact, that's what I have discovered while I dealt with a lot of UX designers is, and again, these are all fresh designers I'm talking about, that they kind of get into this trap of taking the app from the user's end, considering themselves as a user. That if I would have to use this, I would not use this. Do you agree?
See, it works in some cases. It works in the case where you are designing a very general sort of an application. If it's some e-commerce application, it'll work because you're also your user.
True.
But many a times in some specific scenarios, it doesn't work that way. So for example, if you were to design a dashboard which is going to be used by the executive C-suite people, you are not really the user and you don't understand how their brain works, what are the key things that they are looking for in a dashboard, right? So it's important to understand what the key users are and how they'll be using your designed application and in what scenario as well. So it doesn't work in all the cases, I would say, but in some cases it could work. But they take the phrase, get in the shoes of the users too literally. So that is something that shouldn't happen.
Okay. I have a very interesting question which I have come across several times while I dealt with a lot of designers is, most of them are fantastically good with their work, but what is their one mistake that they do because of which it costs their job?
You're talking in terms of the portfolio.
Portfolio, of course.
Right, right. So I would say, I've already mentioned it before. They chase pretty visuals, which shouldn't be the only thing that they are focusing on. So that is one thing. The other thing is that many a times people, they're not concise with what they're presenting in their portfolio. So they'll put a whole lot of case studies, which is something that is not treated well by any recruitment team. They should be very selective and they should prioritize which case studies to be put in the portfolio, and again that has to be tailored to the job that you're applying for, right? The other times what they do is they bombard the recruitment team with all sorts of links, Figma prototype links, which are all loosely lying, right? So that doesn't make for a very good impression. It has to be tied together. There has to be a story followed by a prototype link which probably we can access. Then there are some nitty gritties like don't password protect your portfolio, or if you're doing that because of NDAs or any other reason, be sure to include the password, or so that we don't have to struggle and we are not it has to be made accessible for the recruitment team. So a couple of things that they need to be mindful of. And what there's this also this thing that people are doing under the garb of their work being protected by NDA, that they don't want to showcase anything. But I think there are workarounds of
Of
that
course.
as well, right? You can blur the logos, don't mention any names of the clients. Show us a snippet of your work so that we are able to sort of gauge your capability. And that's all what we are looking for.
True that. In fact, that's what a very important psychological factor also, that it adds friction while you add a username password to any portfolio viewing. And this makes me recollect one of the lessons I learned from Atomic Habits, that if you want to leave a habit or if you want to not have something in the go, then you add a filter to it or you add some friction to it. Now that's for the other purpose, but here it is doing a blunder. It is actually creating friction for somebody to take a next step. Again, that is part of UX only. That are you asking your recruiter to take one more step to uncover your portfolio? Do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, ironically, they are all UX designers, but they create so much friction, as you put it, for the recruitment team. They should make their lives as easy as possible because, in this case, they are their users, right? So, a design manager or a recruiter is your key user, right? And you should sort of design your portfolio to suit their needs, is what
Lovely,
I can
lovely.
say.
Now, this brings me to a very, very important part of either a project, a portfolio, or anything that we even talk about design, which is the business of design. Help me understand, because you have dealt with so many recruiters, you have dealt with so many teams, you have built communities around design. Help me understand, what are those things that are changing, or there are different demands that are coming in place, or there is something that the industry is changing in, but the designers are not that aware of. Maybe what is happening 5 years down the line.
Right. So, when you talk about the business side of things, Sachin, I think it's important for aspiring designers to understand that just coming up with design solutions which are not, in tandem with the business needs is not going to help really in the long run. So you have to understand the business objectives as well as the business stakeholders, where they're coming from, right? What are their goals, like I said initially as well. And you have to speak in terms of uh, a business stakeholder, so you have to speak their language. And what will help that achieve is you'll be able to convince them much more easily of your design solutions. So, for example, if I've designed a solution which I'm confident is reducing the friction for the user, if I speak in terms of their language, that all right, with this, I uh, propose this solution, and with this solution, the user engagement would increase by so and so percentage. That is something that will click their minds, and they'll be able to take
So
your
basically,
proposal.
adding a business KPI on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have to sort of teach yourself that what are the things that drive a business stakeholder, and if you start using those terms, those jargons, if I can put it that way, that will help you convince them much more easily. So that is one thing. Now, in terms of where the design industry is headed in the next 5, 10 years, I would say that uh, communication skills is the only thing that will stand the test of time. So technologies, they'll come and go, but if you are not good at communications and if you are only good at tools, what people do is they become obsessed with tools. So for example, if Figma is in these days, they'll only be obsessing over practicing Figma and doing all sorts of the expert stuff on Figma. It's great, but it's not the only thing if you are to hone yourself as a complete UX designer. So you have to understand that communication is key. If you're able to communicate well to the business stakeholders, to the users through your design solutions, that is going to take you a long way.
Basically, story tell your entire
Again, yeah, right,
case.
right, right.
Lovely, lovely. So how can we forget, when we talk about these tools, the new poster boy of technology these days, AI? Your views on AI?
I think that AI is sort of like an ally to UX design, and it's great stuff is happening in this field, and AI is evolving every day, right? So it becomes important for us to be updated on what's happening, what are the new tools that are coming up in the market, and how we can use AI to sharpen our process and to cut down on the time it takes for us to come up with a design solution. So for example, now, and we've all started doing it in one way or the other. We are all using chat gpt and similar tools. So in my team as well at To The New, what we do is we are focusing on imbibing AI technology in our design process to cut short on the time, so that we are able to design something and there's it's less turnaround time to hit the market. So for example, if we are doing let's say a competitive benchmarking, we can just feed the key stuff into a tool like chat gpt, and it will give you a framework or sort of like a structure on how you can, what are the things that you can focus on if you're comparing your interface with others in the market. And then that sort of cuts down on the time and you are able to proceed well with the competitive benchmarking activity, right? Similarly, at each step of the process, maybe you can find some relevant tool which will help you move ahead in the design process.
Lovely. Um, I was actually interested to know about your views on how these deep research tools are coming in place. So what are your views that Should we do the deep research by these tools, or would you agree that their human touch is required or human to human research is required?
Yeah, Sachin. So, like I said, it's sort of like a gray area. There is no correct answer to it, that we should follow either this or that. It has to be a mix and match sort of a thing. So there are areas where you can leverage these tools and get on with your research, but that's not going to replace the human to human connection, right? And there'll be areas where you need to understand how the user is actually using your application, and for that you'll need to interview them in person, and that will give you much finer results. And it doesn't have to be huge. If I can conclude it, or if I can summarize it, I'd say that we can use AI for research where it has to be done, with a lot of data. A lot of data has to be analyzed, then AI would come to your rescue. But if it's just qualitative things that we need to find out, then reaching out to just 5 users would be much more helpful than leveraging AI in that case.
That's very interesting and very helpful for us to understand. Now, I will go to the rapid fire round, something that we are very interested to take on with our guests.
Sure,
So,
bring
Rajat,
it on.
no thinking aloud, straight answers, whatever comes to your way. Most overrated UX buzzword.
Empathy.
I also talked about it.
Right.
One piece of UX advice you wish every designer knew.
You have to excel at communication.
One thing you would never put in your portfolio, your own portfolio.
I would say just a pretty looking outcome.
A book every UX designer must read.
It would be Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey.
If you could go back and give your own younger self one advice, what would that be?
I would say, what would I tell my younger self? Probably I would say, don't be chasing brands or big organizations, be chasing good work. So that's an advice that I would give myself.
Wow, that was awesome. Something that I was really waiting for, a conversation between me and you. Help me understand if my audience would like to reach out to you for your mentorship, for your other community engagements, how they can and where they can reach.
So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My profile is Rajat Agarwal 2409 on LinkedIn, or they just put in Rajat Agarwal to the new, and I'll be there, hopefully.
Lovely. One last piece of advice, maybe two or three liners that you would like to place to every young designer that is entering into the design world.
So try and hone your skill from a practical perspective, right? Don't just focus too much on what's being taught in your college. Theory is good, but there has to be a practical application to that theory. And you have to sort of self teach yourself into the practical side of the industry. So that's one advice that I'd give, every aspiring designer, besides, of course, storytelling and communication skills.
That was Rajat Agarwal. I was waiting for this conversation for a very long time. A conversation which was very deep to what I wanted to also cover, that how to make your portfolio stand out, how to win resumes, how to win portfolios at all stages of your career. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it added value. Please like, share, and subscribe. And do let me know in the comments below which new career you would like me to cover. Thank you.